I'm going to talk about the crime scene, how to analyze it, and crime scene safety. All right, so this is considered the body of the crime, right? Where the crime happens. So in a case, you must prove that a crime occurred, that the person charged with the crime was responsible for the crime. Without those two, you are not going to have a case. So top reasons for committing a crime are money, revenge, emotions like love, hate, anger, jealousy. And the source of the evidence is going to be the body, a primary and or secondary crime scene. Sometimes there's multiple places where parts or part of the crime has occurred, and the suspects. All right, so the crime scene team, this is a group of professional investigators. Each are trained in a variety of special disciplines. They might have their different areas of focus or different jobs that they would do at the crime scene. So this is going to include like the first police officer. This is going to be not necessarily a detective or a crime scene investigator, but a police officer will show up first. If anyone is hurt at all or there is a body, they will call medics. And then there will be investigators. If there is a body, the medical examiner will be involved as well. And then there will be photographers or field evidence technicians, people to collect the evidence and document it. And then lab experts will come into play to analyze the evidence they find. All right, so processing a crime scene. First thing that needs to be done by a police officer when they show up is they isolate and secure the scene. So they don't want anyone in and out, and they want to make sure it is safe. So there aren't any suspects or anything there to hurt anybody. They secure that first. Then they're going to start documenting. So they're going to start to take notes and take pictures and notice things. Things like transient evidence or temporary evidence, they want to make note of all of that before it goes away. So they're searching for that as they're documenting. Any evidence that they find, they're going to collect and package it. There's a proper way to do this, and they're going to maintain what's called the chain of custody. This is keeping track of who has the evidence. So at all times, it's never, or it has to be accounted for at all times. Then they will submit that evidence to the crime lab for analysis. All right, so the first officer, there is an acronym. This is the order of what they're going to do. So the acronym is ADAPT. The first A stands for assess the crime scene, assist those that are hurt. So first they're going to make sure everybody is safe and okay. If it wrecks evidence trying to save someone's life, that life takes priority. If there's any witnesses or suspects, they're going to detain them, meaning they're not going to let them leave. If there's someone they need to arrest, like there's a strong conviction or evidence that they're already guilty, they're going to arrest them. They're going to protect the crime scene from contamination or from people going in and out, and they're going to take notes. All right, so the crime scene survey, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to walk through it. This is going to be like the first officer, an investigator, detective, depending on timeline. They're going to start to mentally reconstruct what happened. So come up with a theory as to what they think the order and who and all that for the crime. They're going to look for, like I said, transient or conditional evidence that could change. They're always going to note weather conditions, especially if it's outside. Like, has it changed or is it going to change? They're going to look for always where people could come and go. So entry and exit points, like all doors, and then even how people could travel, like does it have to go around furniture or different things. They're going to record all of their initial observations and then any special needs within the crime itself, and they're going to notify other agencies if they need to. So documentation is always going to involve notes, and your notes are going to be obviously the date and the time, description of the location, weather, environmental conditions, description of the crime, all of the evidence, where it's located, other key points like doors, furniture that's not movable will also be noted, and the names of anybody involved, whether that's a witness or a suspect, and anything that has been changed. Let's say someone came in and the medics came in and had to help someone who was hurt, and they moved like a table and chairs to get to them. They're going to make note of that. They're going to take pictures, all sorts of pictures, close up, far away, all different angles, and they're going to want to use different markers to get sizes as well, because it's hard to tell how big or small something is in the picture. So they'll have a reference in the picture with it to identify size. And then all of this will also be part of a sketch. So a sketch is going to include the date and time, like the notes. It's going to have a scale. So it's not just like a random drawing that looks about the same size as the room. It's actually scaled down. So I could measure on the paper and it will match, or I could scale it up. So multiply by whatever the scale is to get the actual measurement in real life. It's going to have reference points, meaning measurements from fixed points that aren't moving, and how far they are, those distance measures, with a key and all the names of everybody involved. Now, something that's also involved or used a lot of the time is videography. So they're going to also record the whole crime scene on video, and sometimes they even do their notes this way. All right, so when there's a crime scene and they're searching for evidence, there's multiple ways to search, and it depends on the type of crime scene as to which one would be best. So if you have a large outdoor area, a line or a strip method would probably be the best. This is where you're gonna go walk from one side to the other and then turn around and go back the other way, kind of like how you'd mow a lawn, just back and forth, covering the whole area. A grid method is your line method, but then when you get to the end, you're going to go perpendicular to the way you started. So you're covering every spot twice, but you're looking at it from a different angle. So a double line search. It's really effective, but it obviously takes more time. If you have multiple people, though, that could help save time. A zone method. This is going to happen in buildings or houses where you're going to kind of split up or not split up and do one area at a time. So like certain rooms at a time. The Wheeler Ray method, if you have a smaller or circular crime scene, this would be where you would like either start in the middle or kind of start in the middle or start on the outside and go towards the center and then go back to the outside and then go towards the center and back to the outside, like spokes on a wheel. And then the spiral would be moving circularly if there's no physical barriers, either starting at the middle and circling out or starting at the outside and circling in. All right, so this is an example of a crime scene sketch. You can see it's got the name, the address, the time, the date. You can see north is labeled, and then within the sketch itself, there are some measurements to fix points, meaning measurements to things that aren't gonna move. You can see the evidence is labeled, and we've got walls and doors and all of those things. All right, so when evidence is collected, they typically assign one person to do all this to make sure it's consistent. They are going to put it in the package, they're going to mark it, they're going to seal it, and keep it safe, so preserved. So each item gets its own container, each an own label, own sealing, so nothing gets contaminated. They collect the most fragile or something that could deteriorate or break down first. And there's different types of packaging for different types of evidence. The body is obviously evidence, but that's where the coroner or medical examiner would take that and process that. So a crime scene investigator is not going to actually handle the body. And really the success in finding who and what happened is all about how well the evidence is collected and processed. It's not about quantity of it, it's quality so that it can be analyzed. So packaging, like something like this, usually there's a primary container, so the container is actually in. You can kind of see some like a lump kind of in the middle of there. There's a package that whatever is in here is in, and then that's in an evidence bag. And you can see the label on it. At the top, it says "Do not tamper." So if that is cut or opened, it will be noted here at who opened it and who is in possession of it. So at all times, they know who had it at what time. And if something happens to it in a certain time frame, they know who to go to because they were in charge of it. So evidence container is marked. There's that written record. That's called the chain of custody, like I was saying. There's always the collector's initials on the seal, so you can tell if it's been broken. When it's given to someone else, that's when it's recorded. All right, the medical examiner is a medical doctor, like a pathologist, right? They're appointed by the governing body, so courts and politicians decide. and there are about 500 forensic pathologists throughout the U.S. A coroner, and you'll hear sometimes these terms used interchangeably, they're not the same. A coroner is an elected official. They don't have to have medical training. They might be the person in charge of the body. They're not necessarily going to do the analysis of it, but they might be the person that comes and collects it and takes it to where it's going to be analyzed. Some states, the coroner has to be a medical doctor, but that's only 4. All right, so the medical examiner, their job is to figure out who the deceased is, the time and the date of the death. What's the cause of death or the injury or the disease that made them die? The mechanism, so the psychological reason. So it might be trauma to the head, but the mechanism would be like the hammer hit their skull. Okay. They're going to classify the manner of death. So there are, I believe, 5 classifications. A natural death, right? It happens on their own. There was nothing you could have done. Accidental death, like a car accident. Suicide. Homicide is a murder. And undetermined means they don't know. And then they're going to notify the next of kin, meaning they're going to tell whoever is their family members what happened to them. All right, so safety at a crime scene. It is possible with bodily fluids and things that an investigator or police officer could come into contact with bodily fluids where they could contract like bloodborne pathogens, they're called, like AIDS or hepatitis B. To protect themselves, they wear gloves, they might wear masks, they might wear other protective clothing as well, so that none of their openings on their body or cuts in their skin or anything could get any of these bloodborne pathogens. Legally, all right, legally when it comes to collecting evidence, all right, evidence can be excluded if it was an unreasonable search and seizure. We talked about warrants before and how if it is illegal to remove evidence from a person or a crime scene if we're not conforming with the 4th Amendment. So the 4th Amendment states that there must be probable cause, meaning we can't take evidence from a place unless we have a reason. Like you can't just be pulled over and your car searched without a reason to search your car. Okay, some sort of probable cause. If it was collected without probable cause, that's when it could be thrown out in court or not used at all. Okay, so investigators want to be very careful to follow the law because otherwise what they find might not be used or be able to be used. There are some cases where police can search without a warrant, things like emergency situations. So if someone is injured or they can hear that they're hurt, they could break in to a house to help them, and they might collect evidence at that time or while they're in there. Another reason would be immediate loss or if the evidence is going to be destroyed. Let's say we can see a big thunderstorm's coming and we see footprints or things outside. We want to collect that evidence or take pictures, document and stuff before it gets destroyed. And if the person is being put under arrest, if someone's already been arrested, we have enough evidence to arrest them. Therefore, we have enough probable cause to search for any other evidence. And lastly, if the people consent, if they say, yeah, go ahead and check my trunk. Okay. All right, so a couple cases. There was the case MINCEY versus Arizona. This was about the legality. There was a 4-day search at a homicide scene. Police raided the house. He was suspected of dealing drugs. There was an undercover police officer who forced entry in, and the undercover police officer was killed in the fight. Police searched for 4 days, and they found all sorts of things. Blood, bullets, drugs, drug paraphernalia. They all used that as evidence in trial, and MINCEY, the suspect, was convicted, but was appealed later because he said that none of those things were obtained with a warrant. And the court said he was right. Police did not have a search. It didn't fit any of the emergency situations where they could search without a warrant, so it was thrown out. He was later convicted with other evidence, but that is not all.